The new S-Class, the new luxury, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz.
Hours away from celebrating the end of 2021, we take a look back at a year where the world got vaccinated and Malaysia got battered by storms, both literal and political. But we start with the spectacular fall from grace of what was once seen as one of corporate Malaysia's most resilient oil and gas companies. When 2021 started, Serba Dynamic was on top of the world. It had managed to weather through the worst of the pandemic in 2020 better than its other oil and gas counterparts. Backed by a R1 billion order book and a seemingly never-ending stream of new contracts, its share price had gained 120% since its debut in February 2017 up to May 2021. By the end of the year, it had become one of Bursa Malaysia's most scandal-ridden companies, with an arrest warrant out for its CEO to boot. It all started to unravel in late May when it emerged that Serba's external auditor KPMG raised red flags on some statutory audit matters. As it turns out, KPMG had flagged an estimated 4.54 billion in questionable transactions, which included allegedly fictitious suppliers and questionable related party transactions. The scandal wiped out 4.7 billion in market cap as investors ran. Bursa suspended the stock on October 22nd. Then, in a press conference held in June, Serba announced that it was suing KPMG after appointing Tan Sri Muhammad Shafi Abdullah as legal counsel. New chairman Datuk Muhammad Ilyas Bakir Muhammad had loudly proclaimed Serba's innocence during the presser, infamously calling KPMG shop block auditors and official gangsters. Since then, it has filed a suit against Bursa for allegedly acting in excess of power. This was for insisting that Serba disclose the findings of the independent review that was being conducted by EY Consulting. There's also the suit against EY, as Serba sought, among others, to block the auditor from making public any findings of the review. Along the way, there seemed to be a revolving door at Serba's board, with many directors being appointed only to resign weeks later. Notably, Muhammad Ilyas resigned on November 24th in protest against Bursa's demands. His successor, Datuk Sri Muhammad Abdul Hassan, did the same barely a month later. Earlier this month, the company also applied to expunge EY's findings update report, which was submitted to Bursa, claiming that it is documentary hearsay evidence. Bursa, on its part, is seeking a court order to compel Serba to reveal the said update. The company also crucially missed a coupon payment for a $300 million sukuk on November 9th, and another a month later on a $222 million sukuk. It all finally came to a head this week. On Tuesday, the Securities Commission charged Serba and its officers, which included directors and its CFO, for submitting a false statement to Bursa Malaysia related to its financial report for the fourth quarter of FY20. A day later, CEO Datuk Muhammad Abdul Karim Abdullah was also charged, appearing after a warrant of arrest was issued for him because he could not be located. They were all charged under the Capital Markets and Services Act 2007, where if they are found guilty, they could be jailed up to 10 years and fined up to 3 million. All pleaded not guilty. 2 years on, COVID-19 continues to be the global overarching story affecting everyone on the planet. Total cases stand at more than 285 million, with a death toll of 5.4 million. This year, however, brought one big positive difference: the kickoff of the largest vaccination campaign in human history. According to Bloomberg's vaccination tracker, some 9.1 billion doses have been administered across 184 countries. On the domestic front, despite the spread of misinformation by anti-vaxxers over social media, Malaysians turned up in droves to get vaccinated, citing fear, the need to protect loved ones, and, most prominently, the desire to return to normal life as main motivators. According to MOH's COVID Now website, over 57 million shots have been administered. Around 78% of Malaysians above the age of 12 have been fully vaccinated. Booster shots, the next hurdle, have been delivered to 18% of the population, and now Putrajaya has decided to shorten the intervals for all recipients to 3 months. Even so, for many Malaysians, 2021 seemed to be like a bad case of deja vu. The country went into strict lockdown again from the second quarter onwards as new cases rocketed to as high as 20,000 per day. Restrictions only eased when most of the population had gotten their shots, with many activities now requiring people to be fully vaccinated. To date, Malaysia has recorded more than 2.75 million infections and over 31,000 deaths. Hearteningly, the number of recoveries stands at over 2.7 million, while daily cases in general have been on the decline. With economic recovery delayed, the government unveiled another 4 stimulus packages to help people weather the storm, the latest being the 150 billion Pemulih package. As 2022 looms, many do see a light at the end of the tunnel, though it might flicker. Variants continue to cause worry, with the latest Omicron dominating headlines as governments race to put more boosters in arms and research teams work frantically to determine how transmissible and lethal it is. A lot of governments have also changed their messaging, from wanting to defeat the virus entirely to now living with it. Scientists have always said the fight against COVID-19 is a marathon, not a sprint. And as fatigue sets in, this virus will continue to have implications on both lives and businesses. The good news is, this time, the feeling is that the world seems to be better prepared. 2021 ends with a double whammy for some Malaysians as they grapple with the impact of the pandemic and deadly floods that have killed at least 48 people, displaced over 60,000, and hurt both small and big businesses. For days, the high water level, the result of some 48 hours of torrential rain, swamped 33 districts in 8 states. As the waters recede, they reveal the true extent of the damage. Debris, broken appliances, destroyed furniture and rubbish piled up high on the streets as affected communities pulled together to begin the cleanup process. Meanwhile, businesses from small traders to foreign MNCs are assessing the impact of the floods on their premises, manufacturing facilities and estates. And the impact is global. Port operations were affected by yard congestion, made worse by the flood situation. Meanwhile, chip makers, including Netherlands-based BE Semiconductor, were hit, threatening to exacerbate the current chip shortage. In the aftermath, a blame game ensued. Malaysians blamed the authorities for not warning them in advance and questioned the role of disaster management agency NADMA. Even the stranded flood victims themselves had the finger pointed at them. Some residents were said to have refused to leave their homes when rescue teams came knocking. On the bright side, many NGOs such as SPCA Selangor and Good Samaritans, including several lawmakers, went to the ground to help in the rescue and subsequent cleanup efforts. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob has since admitted to weaknesses in the government's response to the flooding and pledged to improve on it in the future. He'll need to be quick. Authorities have warned that a second wave of flooding is possible. 2021 was yet another tumultuous period for Malaysian politics. The Sheraton power grab last February saw Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin taking over the reins of the country. But his term was cut short after just 17 months when he resigned on the 16th of August this year. That prompted a power struggle, which culminated in his deputy Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob being named PM. The palace had said that it hoped the political crisis would end with his appointment and that the lawmakers would unite to handle the pandemic. But Ismail Sabri too commands a slim majority. When he took over, he had to rely on the support of Bersatu, PAS and GPS. He also had to ink an MOU for political stability with PH, which is now threatening to pull the plug on the deal. Pakatan itself is witnessing infighting. Recently, there have also been calls for Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim to step aside to make way for new blood. UMNO is also having its own power struggles. This had inevitably weakened its grip on the Malacca State Administration and led to state elections last month. But what a rebound. The UMNO-led BN coalition landed a decisive win, capturing 21 of 28 seats in the state legislature. And at the forefront of its campaign was none other than Datuk Sri Najib Razak, the convicted felon ex-PM who was sentenced to 12 years for diverting millions from SRC International into his personal accounts, and is eyeing a political comeback come GE15, even after the Court of Appeal upheld his conviction. Given the ever-changing political alignments, there is no telling what's next in Malaysia's Game of Thrones. But it is likely that the dynamics of Malaysia's fractured political landscape will remain unstable, at least until the next polls. 2021 was the year that Malaysian companies had to face up to allegations of forced labour. Activist stakeholders stepped into the limelight as environmental, social and governance, or ESG standards, fundamentally changed the way companies do business. And with that came stronger scrutiny. A stream of public accusations over unfair practices, which began sometime last year and intensified in 2021, has led to cancelled contracts and bans. The US Customs and Border Protection, or CBP in particular, has been barring imports from several companies from Malaysia's biggest industries over allegations of abusing their workers and housing them in inhumane conditions. As at December 29, CBP's current list includes 5 glove makers, the most notable being Supermax, and 2 palm oil stalwarts, namely Sime Darby Plantations and FGV Holdings. Top Glove Corp was on that list, but managed to get the ban on its products lifted in September, after more than a year of rectifications and discussions with the US authorities. Currently, the spotlight is on electronics manufacturing services provider Atta IMS, which ended up losing its largest customer, appliance giant Dyson, after fielding months of forced labour allegations. While Dyson initially defended Atta, the British company abruptly changed its tune after doing an audit of Atta's operations, following which it terminated its contract manufacturing agreements. It's a hit to both Atta's reputation and top line, since Dyson historically accounted for over 80% of the EMS player's revenue. As Rosie Hurst of London's ethical trade consultancy Impact told Reuters, Malaysia has become the poster child for forced labour issues, and that starts to do economic damage. Encouragingly, perhaps in one of the biggest signs of change, manufacturers VS Industry and SKP Resources both announced that they had reached out to outspoken labour activist Andy Hall to discuss how they can improve conditions for their workers. The message is very clear. Unless Malaysia wants to put its export-reliant growth model at risk, it needs to wean itself off its appetite for cheap labour, improve working conditions, and innovate.
This program was brought to you by Mercedes-Benz.